You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
Hey everybody, we are live on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. You're listening to Half Past Dead Paranormal Radio with your host Roger Belt and your co-host Kat Hobson.
Hello there.
Hello, hello. How's Katty today?
Dodged my storms. I know that we've got some moving around up north of here, but I thought I'd got. It was so loud. I'm glad it passed on through.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to warn everybody that we may, and it's possible, we had a CME, which is from the sunburst thing, and I don't know all about it, but other people do. But anyway, it was a bad one, and NASA said something about maybe shutting down satellites because of the radiation and whatnot. So if we go off the air, that's probably going to be the reason. And also, our producer has some major storms coming in with tornado watches and all that stuff. And she may disappear due to that. So just kind of a warning to everybody. You know, if we disappear and we can't get back in here, that's the reason. Our special guest tonight is Martha Hazzard Decker, and I refer to her as the Paranormal Profiler. She is an ex-police officer, retired, and I'll just let her explain it because she can do it a lot better than I can. Martha, please tell everybody what it is that you did and what it is that you do, and mainly how did you get involved in paranormal?
Hello. Well, I did police work for one, and then I retired. I don't even know how I got into that other than I was a journalist and photographer for newspapers before I did that and during some of that time. And some of the different skills I had, I could apply to law enforcement. So I stayed. I was head of our warrant department, which was a department of one, me. So I started out as a reserve, and a reserve in Texas is the same as a paid officer. You just donate your time. That's the only difference. And I went from there all the way up through to assistant chief of police. I was lead detective. So, also when I retired, I was also the lead detective. I specialized in crimes against children. I specialized in the militia. The Timothy McVeigh type of individual. Those are two of the things I did. And when I retired from that, I went to work for the state as a special investigator. And I assisted caseworkers and child protective services with serious cases of abuse, fatalities, went to autopsies, did mentoring, did training, just a little bit of everything. And the paranormal stuff started when I was a child. And just with odd things happening, and I've had things happen off and on through my life, so it's something that I've always been interested in. And it was when I retired from law enforcement that I formed East Texas Paranormal and started investigating as a team. I actually started investigating about 99. But I could, come out of the closet, so to speak, when I left the police department, because that was something at the time that defense attorneys could have fun with, and I didn't want, my credibility to be affected on any criminal cases.
Right.
Especially the felony cases, yes. Yes. The last case I had before I left was a capital murder case. It was the murder of a 2-year-old, and the guy ended up pleading guilty to capital murder so that he would get life without parole instead of death.
So you've had a very diverse experience with all of your investigating. When you were doing your police investigating and were kind of doing the paranormal on the side, like you mentioned, did you have experiences with other investigators who followed their hunches, who paid attention? A friend of mine wrote a book called The Para Investigators, and it's like using your sixth sense, your knowledge. Y'all have so much experience as you make detective and go about that. Does that come in handy when you're investigating for work?
It does. It does. You know, if you're really serious about, you know, being a police officer and you're out there looking for things, investigating things. I worked a lot of criminal interdiction. One of my favorite things to do was, right when I was patrol the neighborhoods. After about 10 or 11, everything was pretty much shut down in the area I'm at, and I could roll my car through the neighborhood. It's dark, meaning, you know, lights are off, and the things you can see in the dark versus your headlights, when your windows roll down, the things you can hear, you know, and I think most good police officers have that gut instinct, that sixth sense, and, you know, experience. If they don't, they can build their experience, and most of the, you know, really good ones, you know, that can, you know, possibly even save your life.
Right. Absolutely. Just being aware.
Exactly. I used to use it if I went to like an open door call, open doors, open windows, and I think probably 95% of the time, you know, I could tell if there was a living person hiding inside the house.
Right.
Versus an empty house, you know, and it's still, you can go up to a house, and if you really kind of pay attention, also just, you know, sometimes they just feel empty.
Yeah. It's almost like you can feel their energy.
Exactly.
Well, you use that gut instinct we all do when we're investigating and stuff. I know I do. And, of course, you built that working as, you know, in police work and everything, and I'm sure that you let it bleed over into the paranormal part.
It does.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I can go in a place and my gut tells me, you know, don't go there, stay here, do this, do that, you know. And I'm sure it's kept me from getting injured a time or two.
Mm-hmm.
It does, and once you really learn to pay attention to that and hone that skill, it does. I mean, you know, to this day, I still keep it honed, and I use it, you know, in the paranormal, not just with, you know, doing that investigating, but also dealing with clients as well, you know.
Well, I like your questioning methods with your clients, too. I mean, you just seem so in tune and bring so much to the table with, okay, I'm going back to your book. I'm sorry. Are we there yet? I don't want to be out of line with my questions, but you just bring so much as far as your education ability and background to your paranormal investigations. You know, you had a team that was all law enforcement people at one point, right?
Right, all but one, and she was a normal person, worked a regular job. And now it's probably about, it's at least 50-50 still that way, if not a little more on the heavy on the law enforcement side.
Kind of no-nonsense people.
Well, we are, but we can also have fun. But I have talked to people in the past who are usually just starting out, fairly inexperienced, and you know, they're trying to learn. But when somebody calls on the phone, they tend to believe 100% of what they say, and when they go to their investigations, and we have a little bit that has to be done before we even get to that point. But they'll go in right away, and they're going in to their investigations, they told me, to prove what the client is saying. And it's so important, to go in unbiased.
Yes.
You just keep an open mind, and, you don't go in thinking, oh, they're liars. But you go in there looking for corroboration to their statements and, looking for reasonable reasons that things occur.
Absolutely.
Well, it's the way that ghost hunters used to do when they very first came on. They go in to disprove a haunting. That way, if they prove it, then, there's no doubt.
Exactly.
They try to disprove everything else, and what's left over is what you got. And, I've had people, call and they say, this is going on, that's going on, and all this stuff is going on. It's so crazy, when you get there and nothing goes on.
Exactly, and that happens probably more times than not. A lot of the calls we get, and I've had a lot through the years, especially with our name being East Texas Paranormal. If anybody just goes on, lives in East Texas and does a search trying to find local groups, we pop up right away.
Right.
But I would say that the majority of those are not paranormal, and or sometimes they just want somebody to talk to, or in talking to them and asking them questions, you're able to determine other, possible legitimate reasons for different things.
Well,
and that puts them, that makes them look at it differently. So many of them, one of the things I ask is, do you watch any paranormal shows?
Right.
And I'd say most of the people that I've talked to who have said, I watch all of them, the first thing that comes to their mind was that when they hear a creak or a groan in the house or something, light bulb, blows when you flip the switch, they go straight to the paranormal and then, of course, into the evil. It's evil, it's bad. And, of course, those are also some of the easiest to disprove for somebody, to them.
And then you have the people that will go in there assuming that these people, are giving them the 100% lowdown. The first thing what they want to do is go in there and say, you got demons running all over the place.
Oh, please.
Oh, yeah, and they have, and I've had some people that have had some probably, quote unquote psychic, because they weren't really come in and give them that whole story, and they're scared to death, and you have to go in. Most of the teams that are around, they have to go in and they have to fix that.
Right, because
they're scared for nothing.
Somebody else's ignorance.
Exactly.
And it's really frustrating because you have the teams that go in ahead of you sometimes, and by the time you get there, like you said, they're terrified. And so you're having to deal with a whole different spectrum from what you would have initially found had you just gone in and said, or had anyone gone in and done a true investigation, as opposed to getting their jollies by chasing, quote, demons, end quote, who, because that's the only thing they're going to look for. They're not going to check out the EMF fields through the house or check out the, breaker box to make sure everything looks like it's wired well. And, it's just, that just makes me crazy when you have, clients who are just terrified because someone has made them so.
I know. And some of them that have called, they're that way. And, I have several things they have to do before we even get into an in-depth interview on the phones.
Right.
One of the requirements I have is that they send a detailed email to us at our group email. But I don't lose. I was getting stuff, personally to me, stuff to the group on Facebook, stuff in, half a dozen different places, and things get lost. So I require them to do that and put their name, their phone number, their address on there so I can get with other members of the team. And then of course I know where I can find everything.
Right.
Then we even discuss that, and then I usually have to call them back before we even do a further interview and ask them some more questions to fill in some more blanks, because people tend to generalize things or make broad statements that, might mean one thing to them, but something to half a dozen other people. So you have to get all of that sorted out.
Now, the same thing as when you ask about, I lost my train of thought there. What I'm getting at is, you not only do you ask them if they watch paranormal shows, but you also have to ask them, have you had any other paranormal teams come in here to investigate?
Yes.
And then get, and find out what they told them and what they did, what they told them, and all that kind of stuff. Because more than likely they helped fuel whatever it is they're calling you for.
It's possible, but then again, it's also somebody that may be calling around trying to get the team who will tell them what they want to hear.
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
And there's some people that have called me, and they say, well, such and such team, was here 2 weeks ago investigating, they are investigating. And my comment to them usually is, if another team is currently investigating this, I am not going to come in, who's the team? And most of the time I'm going to know who it is in Texas. So we try to, have pretty good contact with, a lot of different teams, and have a lot of friends out here. And then I'll call that, now I may call that team because I'll let them, you want to tell me something, I'm used to letting people vent, it doesn't cost me anything but my time, and I don't mind that. Sometimes that's all that's needed. Then I may call that other team and ask them, what's up with so-and-so? And, sometimes we find out that, it's a person, sometimes it's a person with a mental problem, and they're just trying to make the rounds. And we've had some crazy stories with some people in Texas.
And that's the hard question to ask a client too. Do you or any of your family members have a mental disorder?
I know,
but it's
and
an imperative one, right?
It's a serious one, and I have done it on the job for, like over 20 years. So to me, I don't even think about it. And same thing with the other law enforcement. It's one of those questions, even if you book somebody into jail, sometimes I feel like I'm into the bookend stage with all those questions, because those are all things you ask somebody when you're booking them into jail when they've been arrested. Or one of the things I used to do as a special investigator for the state for Child Protective Services is if they had a perpetrator who's in prison or in jail, we would go, I would go interview that person and not the caseworker. So, once again, it's the same thing. You're asking all these questions, and I've done it for so long, I don't even have to think about it. And it is hard for somebody to start asking those questions. Sometimes they think they're invading their privacy. Well, all of these could possibly have something to do with doing a serious investigation, and you need to know these questions. The answers to the questions.
The thing about it is, when somebody's claiming they have a haunting, that's one of the things that they want to prove is that they're not crazy. So then when you turn around and ask them, do you have a mental disorder? I can see how that would, automatically be like, well, you do think I'm nuts, don't you? Huh?
But sometimes people take medications that, it's not that they're nuts, but there are different medications that cause various reactions with people.
But,
you need to know if they're taking that.
And you ask them.
And you do. Just because somebody's schizophrenic doesn't mean that it's not happening to them.
Exactly.
Just because they're not schizophrenic, doesn't mean it is. It's just another piece in the puzzle to help you truly assess the situation
Exactly.
and the individual, and possibly maybe you may want to request, and we do this with potentially serious cases. One of the things that they have to do is we want them to go for a medical and physical checkup. We want the clearance, because if somebody has mental problems and you go in, everybody, they need to understand you could be held liable if that person takes a turn for the worst, for the worst. Not, a lot of people don't think about liability issues, but they're there.
Well, and then on the other hand, and this is the part that a lot of people don't think about when they go in to investigate, is some of these people deliberately try to make something happen to them so that they can sue you for it.
Exactly. And it's the same thing. If you're going to somebody's house to do an interview, you should never go by yourself.
Exactly.
No, never.
It's just not safe. You have no idea about that person, and you're going into their territory, and you don't know anything about them. You don't know what's there, and it could be dangerous for you.
Like
Plus, they could say whatever they want. Yeah.
Well, because they can just have a mat on and just want to make the news or whatever. I personally do not like to go and do an initial interview with only women for that reason.
Not good either.
And
that doesn't bother us, but.
Well, I understand, but you also have been extraordinarily trained in self-defense. The average person hasn't, though.
Well trained,
exactly.
So
let me tell you, just because somebody's a male does not mean that they're going to be able to protect you.
Well, no, but I can outrun most of them. So I don't have to run faster than the guy. I just have to run faster than my guy.
There you go. Hey, remember never to go with you.
Well, you just better be able to hustle is all I'm saying.
I can't. Yeah, no, we're not going to do an interview together. No.
Well, in all seriousness, though, you talked about the mental health, and you mentioned a physical. I had a case a few years back of sleep paralysis that was just disrupting the whole family because there was activity in the home, but I wasn't positive that the activity that the sleep paralysis person was having was paranormal, because they did not want to go for a sleep study. And I'm like, you have to have a sleep study for me to even discuss this.
Exactly.
I can investigate your home. I can cleanse your home to various degrees. I can calm it down or I can clean it. Or you can go get a sleep study and find out if we're dealing with something that is not real or that is real. We just need an answer on that. And because they wouldn't do that, we took care of the home, but I couldn't work with that person to clear their personal issue. And, that's hard.
Yeah. It is. We have one right now. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere or not, because he hasn't sent the required email. She sent some email, but not what we needed.
Right.
But one of the things she was talking about, she wanted to talk to somebody. It sounds like somebody who could possibly be sensitive herself. A lot of times it seems like there's somebody who is picking up on things because they are somewhat sensitive.
Yes.
But she kept saying that you just want somebody to touch her, and I would explain to her that nobody has to touch her to know anything. If a psychic were to be with her, they don't even necessarily need to be there, but they don't
have to be in the room.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have to touch you.
Well, and there's cases where when you get touched, you may not like what you get.
Right.
That's very true. Be careful what you ask for.
Exactly. You might just get it.
Yeah.
And, this person was also, I felt that she was sensitive. And it was it was a very strange initial investigation in the home because she had her best friend there and they were drinking, and I'm like, we can't be here if you're having alcohol at all. I was not the team leader on that case, but I was just like, we can't do this. I'm sorry.
I did a case recently where the guy drank the whole time we were there and got drunker and drunker and drunker.
And you stayed?
Well, we stayed because it was a friend of my brother's. And out of respect for him, I stayed there and I went through the whole, investigation thing, which we didn't get anything, but that's beside the point. But that's what he did the whole time.
Well, that's dangerous.
I told my brother, I said, don't ever ask me to do this again, especially if you know somebody does that.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the one that contacted me.
Right. I had a family member several years ago that contacted me about, it may have been their brother, I'm going to say it's their brother, and all these things that were going on with the brother and how the brother was behaving. It was all at the brother's house, and I explained to them I needed their brother to call me. I couldn't go over to the brother's house and do anything without him. And that was pretty much the end of that. And then a couple of years later, this has been a while, so I ended up maybe a year or so ago, I got another call from the brother wanting things to get fixed. Well, now my brother's ready and says he needs something. He was a prison guard here in Texas at one of the Texas prisons, and lived near the prison, I think it was. And they felt like he picked up something at the prison, and it was changing his personality and a whole lot of other things. And again, I told him, I have to talk to your brother. He has to be willing to participate. This is him.
Absolutely.
And this is his house. I can't just go in there on the fly or something.
Did
that one. No, he never did.
Well, see, that's just it. Maybe he was the one that was wanting you to do something, not his brother necessarily.
Could be, yeah.
Right, because sometimes family members do. I did have one lady call, excuse me, and talking about all kinds of things going on and seeing demons everywhere. But it was related to every time she took a photo with her camera, she would there would be demons in them, and there weren't. And her adult daughter had contacted me, knowing nothing about our group, and she was afraid it was going to be some, maybe less than professional group that might come out there and might try to take money from her.
Right.
And and so she was like, "Would you please, don't make my mother get messed up more. We've been trying to get her to go to see a doctor. She's had blah, 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 blah going on. And, as far as stress and different things." And I was able to reassure her that I had already talked to her mother. I had already told her mother that she needed to go get an evaluation before we could even make any decision to come out there. And that's what they had been trying to get her to do. Well, when she came back, it was all related to stress and some other medical problems that she had. Once she got under doctor's care, everything was all sorted out. There were no problems anymore.
Well, that's a blessing.
Well, and that's good, but sometimes what happens is you tell them that, and they'll just contact somebody else that will come, that don't care.
Yeah.
No.
Right, and they may do that, so that team can get sued. I'm not going to.
Nope.
When they go in there and look at the photographs and go, "Oh my God, you got all this stuff going on in here," Which
a lot of times they're using an app on their phone to take the pictures.
Right.
Because I have seen the same ghostly woman in Philadelphia, Seattle, Baltimore, Florida, all through Florida, Atlanta. And it's people using the app that have it come up. And
it looks real. If you look at it, and you don't know better.
Well, it did the first 6 times.
Yeah, but then you
You know?
figure it out, like, hey, what's the deal here?
I
Well,
know,
this
right?
sure does travel.
Right. There was one guy who sent me probably 50 to 75 pictures. First it was about things he was seeing on his TV, and then it was about the clouds, and he's just sending me pictures. Everybody, even 3-year-olds can see, animals and people in clouds. That's just
Right.
just how it is, and there was absolutely nothing there. And he was using an old-time phone, 1 or 2 megapixel type camera in the phone, and trying to explain all this to him was, sometimes people just don't want to hear the explanations.
Okay.
Well, and that's a hard thing to deal with.
We're live on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. You're listening to Half Past Dead Paranormal Radio with your host, Roger Belt, and co-host, Kat Hobson, and our special guest, Martha Hazzard Decker. And we are talking about interesting photos of clouds with animals and ghosts in them. So, with a 2 megapixel camera. Carry on, please.
Well, and people that just won't take no.
Right.
Right. Some of them don't. Some of them don't. I've had some send me pictures with their orbs in them while they're out in a barn with a dirt floor. You're going to get independent,
and that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and depending on your camera too, because there is quality of lens and mirrors and all sorts of things that affect how your camera does things, how it sees things, and how it interprets those things.
Well, it's an orb because it's got a face in it.
Right.
I'm sorry. I have the hardest struggle because I have seen orbs that to me were just so obvious. Exorcism by pledge. You've got this. And then I've seen orbs that make me go, well, that's different. But they're so few and far between.
Well,
and it's so hard to give credibility sometimes because I've seen so many that aren't. And then people get so mad at you. It's like the Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow running down the beach with the cannibals behind him. I said I just thought it looked like a dust particle. I have felt like that.
I still haven't had that one to float up to me and go, hey, Raj, I'm an orb yet. So I'm still on the other side of that fence.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many unexplained things, but then there's so many things that there's so many plausible possibilities that you can't go to the unknown with it because there's too many reasons why it's not something. So it's just out there. But sometimes, I've seen some people post, like charts with all these different colored orbs mean blah, blah, blah. And I have yet to find somebody who said they have actually sat down with the king or queen of orbs that discussed this with them and explained what they mean when they turn different colors, like a mood ring.
Right. And it is like a mood ring. I mean, if you read those charts, that is what it is. And, this is an angry orb. This is a placid and mellow and bringing you happiness. And I would love to think that all of that is the case. But I have yet to see anything to sell me on it.
Well, I know. And when my first digital camera, I would go so many places and there's little orbs all over the place, which has to do with the camera and the dust and the humidity and everything else, bugs. One of the first things I did when I formed the team, and there were a few people that were not experienced in investigating, is I would like to go to a spot that might have a reputation, sometimes a public location or just somebody's house to do, we would go out and we would do practice exercises. Just like I did in law enforcement, you go out and you practice things.
Yeah.
And we were in a cemetery one night, and there were a couple of people kept talking about, oh, orb, look at all these orbs. And
oh, wait a minute, you're a photographer too.
Right.
So you know
and
this.
So,
I am too.
That's
why I'm going there with you.
Right. So, one of the simplest tests for somebody new, somebody who doesn't have a lot of camera experience, is have them, what I had everybody did it. I said, take your camera, put it up to your eye level, because everybody had, it would flash, it was dark, and just move your head. And I told them, keep it at your camera level like you were looking, and most of them were, the rangefinder cameras, and just move it so you can see in front of the camera and hit your button. And of course, when they would do that, they could see, millions upon millions of all kinds of things floating in the air that the light was, reflecting off of.
Mm-hmm.
And, anybody can do that somewhere. And it's just like when you have a pin light or a light somewhere and you see all this dust floating around it. It's the same type thing.
Yeah.
Now I have a cell phone with a 16 megapixel camera on it.
I know, right? My sister ditched her Nikon for her iPhone. I'm like, whatever.
Well, I know. I'm sitting here with two Canon 60 cameras. And, the camera body is the 60D.
Yeah.
And I have two of them. It's getting to where, I've got the Android that, gee, this phone is almost is just about the same megapixel as those cameras. Now I can do a lot more with those, but.
Yeah.
But,
well, you can play a lot more with those.
Yeah.
I just was so glad that I was pleased to have my Nikon. I went to Arizona, and I actually, in the dusk of the coldness that is early morning that high, even at this time of year, I got all kinds of orbs. There was so much humidity and so much dust. It was so pretty. But I'm being facetious.
Well, you can't, but that was also the one thing I noticed is the megapixels on the digital cameras have crept up.
Mm-hmm.
There are fewer and fewer orbs in the photos. I hardly ever get anything like that I never did in my 35 millimeter.
I was shooting a D90, and I had my 7300 shooting across the valley, and obviously there was a lot there, just schmutz,
right?
But
now, see,
it was fun.
I'm not saying that I can't believe in orbs. I'm just saying that as of yet, I have not seen anything to make me believe in orbs. I've got an open mind, but you got to show me something besides what I've seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that was definitive.
And there are things out there. I mean, I've seen balls of light shoot through a room, but with my eyes.
Yeah.
Before.
I didn't get it
so,
on camera.
there's.
And see, that's a little different, but I haven't seen that. But I'm saying if something I can see with my naked eye that's real bright shoots through a room or something like that, then I've got something to say, I just saw something that's not your typical, what everybody calls, quote unquote, an orb.
Well, when it happened in my house, and it was amazing that I happened to be there and see that. I was sitting on the couch. I have a little Yorkie that was sitting by the window where the sun was coming in, and she likes to go sit in the sun. And all of a sudden she jumps up and she starts running in between two of the couches. But what I saw was this little orb of light just appeared right by her. And at the same time I saw it, she saw it, and she went and she chased that until it just disappeared.
Really?
And she just took off running after it. Yeah. And it wasn't that long after one of our dogs had died. Sometimes we're the geriatric home for dogs at my house. And it was, within a month or two of that. But to me, that was just amazing. Whatever it was fascinating. And I was glad I was able to witness that because it was something. I saw it.
That's cool. And I don't think we ever got your answer to what thing it was that convinced you to investigate paranormal stuff? What was the major event that sent you down that road?
Everything that happened to me growing up. I didn't have a lot of things happening to me, but things have happened to me throughout my life, you know, at least several times a year, you know, sometimes more than that, that are still kind of unexplained to me. I was 4, 5, maybe, with my earliest memory of something. And the craziest one was in Memphis when I was a teenager. And I lived down the street from, well, there were a couple crazy ones, but I lived down the street from Elvis, but there was probably a good 80 to 100 acres behind our house from a church to another street it was just, you know, solid woods. Not any particular path through there, but it was all woods behind our house, behind our yard. And I looked out my window, 2-story house, full moon. I look out my window one night, and directly behind our house is now like a field. It's not woods. There are woods, but they're like down a couple houses. And I'm watching a group of people walking with purpose is the best way to say it, because it was orderly. It wasn't like an angry mob, but they were angry, and you could just tell that they were angry, and they were going with determination and purpose, just in the speed that they were going, and what you could see with their bodies. And they had the torches that they used to use in the 1800s, early 1900s, you know, before flashlights and everything like that, 1800s. Men, women, they were coming through, and their path came out of the woods into what was now brush, you know, about knee to waist high, and the path continued, and it made a right-angled turn right into our yard. And I'm watching this, and about the time they get to turn and start marching towards our house, I was in high school. I think, you know, I wish I had stayed and watched, but instead I decided to jump in bed and, you know, cover my head with a sheet.
We had a question in chat from Mars. Let me back up here just a second. And he's saying basically, what about UFO orbs? Does anyone feel they are the same, or are they extraterrestrial? I've never seen a UFO orb. I don't know what he's talking about, but
I'm not sure what that is either.
I'm not sure what you would call a UFO orb. Now, we do have 3 people with our team who, 2 of them used to be with MUFON. One, Jane and Dave Nelms, who live out here in East Texas, not too far from me. She used to be, many years ago, she was the president of the Dallas chapter. And then Nancy Davis, who also lives out here, was in a MUFON chapter down in Corpus. So, you know, our paranormal stuff is not excluded to, you know, spirit type thing, but how would you know something is a UFO orb? I don't know. Unless they're referring to something like, say, the Martha lights or something like that.
Will that be like the Green Mountain lights in North Carolina? I mean, where
the Martha
stuff
lights,
is there?
Well, the Martha lights, if somebody doesn't know, in Martha, Texas, which is down by Big Bend National Park, one of my favorite places to go if I'm down in the park.
Are you saying Martha or Marshall?
Martha, M-A-R-F-A, Martha, Texas. For over 150 years now, I'd say, 150, 175 years, people have seen lights. They have a viewing station. The state finally put one up to try to make it safer, but on one of the highways, the highway that goes through Martha, when you stand there and you look north, I believe it is, you're looking towards the Christmas Mountain. And like I said, since the 1800s or so, people have seen lights, and I've seen them dozens of times. It will appear just above the horizon towards the Christmas Mountains that some people may call those orbs. And sometimes it's one light, sometimes it's multiple lights, sometimes one divides into 2 or 3 lights, sometimes they change colors. sometimes they actually come like they're coming towards you, and they're off quite a ways, and nobody has ever been able to figure out what that was. It's not car lights. There weren't cars in the 1800s. And they've had, they've tried to chase them. I think they had an Air Force plane once try to chase them. People have tried to drive out there, hike out there. The last time I was there, I talked to a local who said that he had some friends who tried to walk out there. Well, he stayed at the viewing station, and while he could see the lights, they were walking in the direction, but they couldn't see the lights anymore. He could still see them, but they couldn't see them anymore. So that is probably...
I'm sorry.
I was just to say that's probably one of the most unique, what are these lights kind of stories, especially in Texas.
Well, the place that I mentioned, I think it may be Brown Mountain Lights, but in North Carolina.
Right.
But has anyone, or are you familiar with anyone dealing with the Marcia lights having lost time incidents? Because that has happened with the Brown Mountain Lights. Right.
They did. I don't know if that has ever happened with the Martha lights. I mean, that would be easy enough to look up because there's been in fact, I wrote an article a couple of years ago about them myself, but, there's just been tons of things written about them. There's all kinds of videos on YouTube. Just put in the Martha lights. And in the research that's been done or attempted is pretty interesting. And like I said, to this day, they have no idea what causes those lights. All I know is when you're sitting out there in the dark and you're by yourself, or I had a friend, I used to go camping in Big Bend, and we would always go sit out there, and you had the two females, this was like, say, back in the 80s, and you're sitting at this semi, park. It's a little pulling area with a little, barrel to throw trash in. And you're out there all by yourself, and it's midnight or so, and there's no lights, there's nothing around. It would get a little creepy sometimes. Not so much now.
I can see that, but not so bad.
It's, especially if some odd-looking males kind of showed up.
That could be a little freaky.
Right.
As long as they weren't, big black eyes and are reptilian looking, I guess you'd be okay.
Well, no, it's a live human person you've got to watch out for the most.
Isn't that the dadgum truth? I'm much more afraid of the living than the dead.
Yes.
So they're meaner.
No,
Roger, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was following that link that you posted, and it took me to a page called Dr. Rita something and other extraterrestrial gods.
Rita Louise. Rita Louise is one of my good friends. She also does stuff when I meted with the East Texas Paranormal. She's, our website doesn't have all the members listed on there, but she's part of our group as well. And she does a lot of stuff. I
posted your link, so.
Okay, good. She does a lot of stuff with ancient alien type things. She has some fascinating
I like
videos that she's put together.
I watched all those ancient alien videos and stuff. I like that.
I like that too.
Well, she has some really good ones she's done. In her last book that she wrote, Man-Made, is fascinating. In that book, she took the similarities between going from ancient religions up to like now, and how many of the stories are similar, and all the different, texts for all the different religions, and it's a fascinating read.
Makes it hard to doubt it, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Well, now some of those videos, though, ancient alien videos, you can watch them and it makes a lot of sense. And then some of them, of course, don't make any sense, but there's a lot of it.
That's true. And Ancient Aliens, as far as the series, also have to remember that this is TV, and while there is some education in there, it's,
entertainment.
Education with entertainment value.
Right.
But Rita Louise is, that's been one of her specialties for quite a few years. So it's fascinating to talk to her about that.
How long have y'all worked together?
I think I've known Rita now for 7 years or so. And she's been probably the last 4 years somebody that we, was part of the, I don't know, it's been so long, I don't remember exactly when she just kind of became part of the team.
Isn't that fun when you have such interesting people?
It is, and sometimes some of my friends just kind of blend into the team because of different specialties or skills they might have. Because we try to remain diverse, even though there's a lot of us former law enforcement. We try to, keep it diverse as far as skills go. Nancy Davis, on our team that was in Corpus with MUFON, she worked for the federal government as an interviewer. If anybody had heard of like the Kinsey report.
Right.
She was one of those government people that went out to people's houses and asked them all those sex questions.
Well, I bet that was fun. I bet she got educated.
Oh, yeah, especially when they were doing
one of the two.
She got. I think that was back in the 60s when they did that.
60s or early 70s. I remember being amazed that people would even discuss that.
Oh, I know. Today they wouldn't, but back then the questions, it's kind of funny to hear, her talk about some of the questions that she had to ask or some of the crazy responses she would get that kind of, made her, put back like, what?
No doubt.
I wanted to ask you, and I ask different guests the same question sometimes because I'm interested, to get your different outlook. When it comes to poltergeist activity, do you think, because there's usually always a teen or something involved, adolescent, whatever you want to call them, in or around the puberty stage. So, do you believe, like some people say, that they're putting off kinetic energy that's stored up or something like that? Or do you believe that it's actually spirit related?
It could be one or both. And I think you don't necessarily have to be a teenager. I think sometimes you can be an adult and you're putting so much energy out there that things can happen. There was one group or one couple that we did an investigation at their house and realized that the activity was of the poltergeist type, but they were, in their, maybe early 30s, and there was possibly some activity in the house, but they were feeding it. They would fight so much, and there's a long story with this one. I won't go into it all necessarily, but it was one of those we went to without doing the long pre-interview because she was a paramedic, and she was also on a paranormal team, and she sounded very credible, and it wasn't that far from here, so we just went out there, and that's the one couple that we sent to marriage counseling.
Well, now see,
this is the problem.
It's said that spirits will get people to fight each other because they feed off of the negativity from that.
Right. But I think this is one because I think people can just start generating something when nothing is there, possibly because of maybe the high energy, whether it's good energy or bad energy that they're, sending off. And probably I think most people attribute that to teenagers because that's a really tough time of your life and there's so many things going on.
Exactly.
You feel like, a year might as well be 100 years from now because it's so far away, and they get so frustrated and they get so aggravated. So so many of them, and just having to deal with everything.
Too.
Yeah.
You got the hormones rocking.
Exactly.
And then when they're going through the puberty stage, that's hard also because they're changing from being basically a child into being an adult.
Mm-hmm.
A young adult.
And, and that's a whole, that's a whole nother issue now because they are doing this when they were they are doing this at 10, 9, 10, 11 years old now. They're not even teenagers yet. They're so young that they're going through that.
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
that's what my pediatrician says.
That must be an evolutionary thing.
No, that's all the crap in your food thing.
Yeah.
What?
Really?
Well, yeah. Okay. What
all the growth hormones.
What is the food thing that everybody's harping on?
Monsanto and GMOs.
Yeah, the GMOs and the
growth hormones.
The growth hormones, the antibiotics, all of those things that they're putting into food.
And not to mention the injections that they give you.
Right.
Well, those just keep you from dying and making other people sick. But the food that you ingest is what's chemically changing your body and causing early development in children.
Just throwing a crazy thought out there, but all this the food stuff that's tainted, whatever you want to call it, screwed up. Everybody's eating that stuff, and it is actually changing the way things work. And it kind of makes you wonder if somewhere down the road you're not going to start seeing these what was it they called them in all the movies?
Mutants,
yeah, running around.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, just think of the mutant fish from The Simpsons and the nuclear power plant.
Oh, that's why I don't even eat out of the Pacific. I'm serious. I'll take my chances with the oil out of the Gulf, but I am so not eating nuclear crap. And, people I'm kidding, but I don't eat out of the Pacific. But the whole thing with the GMOs is that everywhere else in the world, people ban that.
Exactly.
And yet our government is subsidizing it and shoveling it down our throats as fast as we can get it.
Exactly.
That's why they do that.
Well, they can't sell it abroad. It has to be used here.
The people pulling the strings in the USA are making money off of it. They're not going to ban it.
But they can't. They have
because
a limited
that lobby
market.
is
They can
stronger,
only do it here. But they don't have. Right. It's not part of our GDP because they cannot export it and sell it. It has to be used here. Only here in America can people eat that.
They won't put up with it anywhere else.
That's right. So,
I think there's a couple of countries that will take some of the GMO items, but there's not very many. There's just a small handful.
And there's a small percentage of what they'll allow you to use.
Well, and there's probably small, little struggling countries that need the money.
Right, or they need to feed people because, they're so, there's no crops, no water, nothing but desert or something, and they're desperate.
Okay, we've kind of strayed away from the paranormal side, but
thank you. Yeah.
Very interesting stuff, though. Anyway, yeah, we kind of got a little bit off target there, but you think about it, it all adds up. You're going to be running around here like freaking zombies one of these days, and that's paranormal. So
true. Do you know that I had the Tyler Morning Telegraph, which is a legitimate newspaper? One of the reporters called me when the K2 and the bath salts were, first in the news, and you had the people eating, other people's, faces off when they were, high on this stuff. He called me dead serious, wanting to know what our team thought about zombies. Are they real?
Interesting.
And after I stopped laughing 10 minutes later, I told him what I thought about it was like, don't do drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then I told him to call somebody else.
There's your drug campaign. Don't do drugs. You'll become a zombie.
Right.
Well, don't do bath salts. You'll eat people's faces.
No kidding.
I mean, and be naked while you do it.
Hey, cat.
Well,
and let me
they
tell you, there's
were.
not very many, there's not very many things to grab a hold of when you're trying to arrest a naked person.
That's right,
true.
especially a sweaty, drugged out freak of nature naked person.
Exactly.
Hey, are we doing an X-Files episode here? I'm just curious.
It was a reality. It happened on a bridge in Miami.
Do. Okay.
And it happened somewhere else too, but I know the guy was
happened a
filmed
bunch
on the
of
bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. It happened, I think I read at least a half a dozen places, if not more, that I read about. I know. But I just, to me, I couldn't wrap my mind around a legitimate reporter for, for a paper like that calling dead serious about it. I just was flabbergasted.
They were probably getting all kinds of questions.
Okay, you guys, I got to interrupt y'all. We're going to take a short break, 2 to 3 to 4 minutes, give or take. We're live on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. You're listening to Half Past Dead Paranormal Radio with Roger Belt, Cat Hobson, and our guest, Martha Hazzard Decker. We shall return. Don't go away.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
Hey, you there. Yeah, you, watching the ghost hunting show on TV? I know. What are you doing now? Looking at something you've seen on a website? Trying to get the latest ghost gadget? Well, stop that. Let's try something different. It's called research. This is Frank Lee, host of Paranormalities and Ponderings, here on the CJ Mars Radio Network, every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Tune in and let's learn together. Do I know everything? Far from it. But I'm bringing some great informative guests so we can learn all we can together. I'll see you Tuesday on cjmarsradio.com.
blast off. We're back. And, you'll have to beg my pardon because I forgot where we were when we stopped there. We were talking about hammocks, so, we got carried away.
Well, I think we were trying to break away from Monsanto is what we were trying to do.
Yeah, because, we were getting too far into the zombie apocalypse and all that. And, anyway,
which is paranormal.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Things not known. Unusual things.
And if you get into voodoo and all that, they supposedly created zombies,
Hoodoo.
Real live zombies, but,
yeah.
Right, hoodoo, not voodoo, but hoodoo.
Yeah. Voodoo.
Who do that voodoo you do so well.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that would go kind of into that, but, anyway. About your book.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about that book.
Yes, and I didn't get a chance to read it, and, because it was kind of late when I got a hold of it and finally got it opened up. But, explain how that came about.
How the book came about? The book came about so I could add a little more detail, and it is a basic beginner's guide to interviewing a client.
Oh, cool.
And,
yeah.
And how to look for signs of deception.
Right.
So it came about from doing radio shows and speaking at conferences. Everything would always, most of the time, would gravitate towards, the law enforcement skills on how to interview somebody, what to look for, in all these different things. And I was actually working on a fiction series at the time, and I dropped that because I thought the book could be something handy for someone who is not used to interviewing somebody, because it has, in the back, it has, pages of questions to ask when you go on, when you interview somebody, different things to do prior to your investigation as far as research into the interview, into the location, how to look for the corroboration on different statements that your clients have given you. But I made it small enough so that it was easy enough to read, and it wouldn't take you, 6 months to read it.
Right.
Well, what I've read so far is really interesting, and I especially like when you talk about the main focus being to be open-minded without a predisposition either way. And,
right.
I think, don't you think, I guess you do since you say it's the main focus of the book, but that is the most important thing, just go in and accept what is that you come across as you investigate.
You have to do any good investigation or to do any good interview, either way. If you go in predisposed to an idea of, it's paranormal, it's not, or even whether they're telling the truth or lying, or bringing in your religious belief into something, it clouds your judgment. If you keep a truly unbiased, open mind and go in, you're going to pick up on things you might not have noticed if you went in there, predisposed to believe one thing or another.
Mm-hmm. And I like where you speak to neighbors and you get family histories, you get, the research involves, newspaper articles and all this other stuff. You're so full of good ideas on where to go to get the information that you really need to have. It's just chock full of stuff here.
Well, I know there's
contacting the former owners and.
And there's way in the ways to do that. You don't go to the next door neighbor and go, hey, have you seen any of Joe's ghosts over there? You go over to, you go over to the neighbor and you just ask the neighbor, have you, ever noticed anything unusual happening? It's like, you're going for a referral for the client. You're going to the neighbor for a referral. And, and it's important to contact the witnesses they have, but their witnesses are always going to be biased to say things, that's going to make the client look good. Just like a job interview, you put your best friends down. Well, you're not going to get a full picture because they're only going to say things that most of the time that are going to put that person in a good light. So you just go in with an open-ended question of, have you ever seen anything you thought was odd or unusual? Have you ever heard anything? And just leave it at that.
I just can't get over. And then you've got, interpreting non-verbally. The things, and I find this fascinating because I used to work for a fire department in Georgia with a fire marshal who had to do interviewing like what you're talking about. And, he taught me a lot about tells, and my husband's a poker player. So we're always talking about different people's tales and stuff like that. And I had not even thought about applying that to my paranormal interviews.
And it fits right in.
It
because
does.
Everybody, and it's a tell whether it's, if they're just holding back from telling you something because they're embarrassed, they're afraid you're going to think, ill of them or think they're crazy. Mm-hmm. By watching their behavior, we go in and do the interview with two people. And that way you can have one, and then we record audio and video record of the interview as well. So you have one, taking notes and the other one asking questions. And that way, when you're asking questions, you're able to watch the demeanor and the body language of the person you're talking to. I can tell, sometimes you can ask one question and then they instantly shut down, and you can really tell that by their eyes. You get that a lot. Of course, there's, been a lot of people I've interviewed through the years. Sometimes I could go in and do an interview or interrogation, and right off the bat whether you're, whether they're going to shut down on you or not a lot of times. And that's why it's so important to build up a rapport with that person. Find something to talk about that's not while you're there, to get that rapport built, to help build that trust so that they feel like they can tell you everything.
I was kind of going into a little bit of this, chapter 13 here, or page 13, where you're talking about a new house being built on an old property where there's never been a house before, nothing ever recorded of anything happening on that property before, and people rigging stuff up to make it look like there's all this activity going on so that they can market that house as a haunted property.
Right.
And
people do that.
Yeah, and well, not only that, but that also goes into a thing that I've run into where people just want the attention. Their neighbors see, these people all pulling up, getting all this equipment out. Well, what's going on over there? It gives them that they get to be in the spotlight for a while, and especially if they think that it's like ghost hunters coming there or something, taps or whatever. They get to be on TV,
Or they want to be on that show, so they want you to come in with your team and go, oh, you're haunted.
Exactly.
And, so they may rig. That's why a lot of the book is focused on, finding their tells, how to, and you can't always tell a good liar is a good liar, a pathological liar or sociopath or, the way they are, and you're not always going to spot everybody, but by doing a lot of other things too, it may help you, go, maybe not. You cannot, it's important, you can't go by, does a person look to the left or look to the right? that's just one indicator of something, and almost everybody knows that. So, maybe they're going to reverse that. There's other things to look for, and then with that one, you also need to know, is that person left-handed or right-handed? If you don't ask the question and you don't know, you may assume somebody's either being truthful or deceitful by using, wrong information. So I hardly ever use that one or anything.
Now, what makes a place truly haunted? And that's a question that I think everybody's probably asked at one time.
And it gets different answers every time, too.
Exactly. And and what exactly would you say makes a place haunted? You don't know until you get there, for one, but, you can hear all the hype and everything, but you go in there saying, to yourself, well, it's not haunted until I can prove to myself that it is.
And with one visit, you may not prove it.
Exactly.
Nope.
And so then you have to tell them, hey, look, your place isn't haunted. And they're going, oh, yes, it is. I know, So
well, sometimes you have to commit. If it's an extreme haunting, because spirits are not circus animals. They don't perform on command.
Exactly.
And, you have to let the client know sometimes, I think, that you're going to have to be coming back and forth. Do y'all do that,
Exactly.
Martha?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
and I also think that spirits will interact with you the more that you visit the place. If
Yes.
it is haunted, they're gonna, when they get used to you, they'll interact more.
I think that's especially true of
do.
young spirits.
There's some places that I've gone to that are known for their activity, and every time I go there, I have something happen. And I think that's because I went there so many times, and it is, we don't really know what it is, but based on what our assumption of what it is, it's like you said, almost they have grown accustomed to you. Maybe they like you. Somebody can take up dowsing rods and they work really well, and then the next person does it and nothing happens. And it could be two people that know what they're doing. Maybe, if there's somebody there, maybe they like this person more than the other person.
Yeah. We actually had that happen with my team a lot. I get fussed at by the spirits that are on site occasionally, and it's generally extraordinarily rudely done. And my teammate and founder, who is the mother of 3 young children and very gracious, and she's sensitive, and they love her. And it's gotten worse as my skill sets have been building. It's really kind of funny. I was out for almost 3 months. I was not able to investigate. And when I went back, I was so excited because I felt good, and we were going hiking through the woods to do it and yada yada. And still got that. And so sometimes it's good to have different personalities investigating together, because it's going to be drawn to one and not drawn to the other, like you said. But we have one teammate, and she gets frustrated because she can come do something, and then she may leave before the rest of us or something, and nothing happens. She has no personal experience, or and nothing seems to be happening. But then she leaves, and all of a sudden everything starts kicking up. And she's like wondering, is it me? So who knows I know,
what it
right?
is.
Well,
Right.
it's gotten to be a joke with our team, because the B word is going to get dropped, and it's going to get dropped when I ask a question, and everything is just, oh, you're so wonderful with her. It's just really funny. And she thinks it's because I recognize and can deal with stuff, and I think it's because she's so sweet, wonderful, and nurturing. So, different things.
combination of both, maybe.
Yeah. Roger, do y'all get that? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was just going to ask Roger if he had that experience with his team because they investigate often.
We run into stuff that, how would you put it? We went into a house and I tell these stories because one of them is funny and the other one just is ridiculous. We went into a house where a girl claimed to have 11, I think it was, portals in a 10 by 12 bedroom. And one of them, she said she heard scratching in the walls in the closet. And our team founder went over there to check it out and everything. And he opens the closet door and there's a 2-inch mouse hole at the bottom with a little head sticking out. And he goes, "That's what's scratching in your wall."
Exactly.
And how are you going to get, 11 portals in a little old bedroom like that? Man, there must be some activity in there.
No doubt.
Either that or it's a really fascinating multi-dimensional time machine.
I'm saying, I wouldn't want to be in there. Yeah. Oh, and the other one is the invisible anaconda house. Oh my God. This one, this lady's like, she's got a 15-foot invisible anaconda in her house, and it's wrapped around this little old tie tree thing that's sitting on a shelf in the little laundry room area. Now, you got a picture, if you know what it's either a hat tree or a tie tree or something. It's one of those little sticks with the little things coming out, And she claims that this snake is wrapped around this tree, this tie tree, or this hat rack tree or whatever. And Dusty, our founder, being the polite guy always wanting to help the client, unwraps the snake from the tree, and he's holding his hands about 10, 12 inches apart, and he says, "Have I got it?" And she says, "No, it's bigger." So he spreads his hands out further, right? And he says, "Have I got it now?" Yeah. So he unwraps the invisible snake from the tree, and he's holding it, and she goes, "You don't have its head, it's biting you right now." So he scoots his hand up further. "Have I got it?" "Yeah." He goes, "Open the door." "Why?" "Well, if you want me to get the snake out of the house, you got to open the door. I can't let go of the snake." So open the door. She opens the door and he takes it out, and he tells her that he's got this convict ghost that follows, because he works at the prison, right? And he tells her he's got this convict ghost that follows him everywhere. So he goes through the motion of dragging this invisible snake out of the house, and he goes, "Okay, convict ghost, kill that snake." And he goes, "It won't be coming in bothering you anymore." But the funnier part of it was when her husband had him in the bedroom showing him where stuff was supposed to have been happening in there. Pulls out a drawer and goes, "Here's where we keep all our drugs."
Jeez.
Oh, my word.
We left there, we stopped at the nearest McDonald's and when we got into town, and we're all backed into the parking area back there, and we're all out just laughing while he's demonstrating, because we weren't in there when he did this. He's demonstrating how he got the snake out of the house and all that stuff.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, we had one.
There wasn't a dry eye in the bunch. Let me tell you, we were laughing so hard we all had tears just streaming down our face.
But you know what? It probably made her feel good. She probably thinks it's gone, and it eased her mind. We had that with the police department years ago. There was a lady that used to call, she had the tinfoil on everything, had her caught on her head kind of thing. And she kept calling about people being there that, weren't there, and the whole full-blown everything. So the officer that worked that night had a young son that he'd have to deal with, the monsters under the bed and all that. So when he went in there with her, he got his Alien Begone spray. And he sprayed inside the house and all the rooms. And then it's like, he was being respectful of her, and he did this, and he says, "Okay, they're gone. They will never be," and they never came back.
Oh, my gosh.
And sometimes it's something as
Brilliant.
simple as that, but it's funny.
It is funny.
You know,
Some things can be really funny.
I'm gonna
The comfort thing is cool.
I'm gonna have to get that Alien Be Gone spray. I need to get me some Ghost Be Gone spray too. So
That's what I'm getting.
yeah. And you can get some of that, you know, the air in the can that you use for your PC stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and just put Ghost Be Gone on it. You know, a label that says Ghost Be Gone on it.
I think I'm putting some in my bag tonight. Gonna make me a label.
Now
but you know, it is and we had someone ask if there's any anti-demon spray, and absolutely there is. It's called
I
Holy
hope so,
Water.
because he stole my hair gel.
There you go. But we are so bad.
I know.
Yeah. I use
With
that
complaints,
picture in my
please
presentation.
I got that in my saved, and I post it every now and then just to give everybody a good laugh. But
I love it.
It's in my presentation when I talk about certain things.
I understand.
Now that we didn't exactly bring him up, but it is him in the picture.
That's correct.
If
But
you
who do you mean?
watch, if you 99% of every Ghost Adventure show that I ever watched, and I watched them for a while, and then I'm like, what the heck? And he always stands there with this recorder in his hand saying, I just got this Class A EVP saying such and such, and all I hear is
Yeah.
and he'll loop it, and it'll go over and over. It's saying,
I know.
there's a demon right there. You know, it never is what he says it is.
You know, through the years, I have had so many recordings of unintelligible things that there's something there you have no idea what it is, where it came from, and I don't even include those. If we can't figure out what it is by listening, and we don't have a lot of those,
you know, nobody else is going to understand it.
Right. You know, and I just, you know, I would never take something like that to a client.
No. Well, I mean, I'm serious. The best rule I ever learned from Jason is when in doubt, toss it out.
Exactly, yes.
Exactly.
Because that is absolutely because there is plenty out there. A, you don't have to go manufacture it because there is activity and you will document it if you're doing a serious investigation. B, you're going to take something to someone and they're going to look at you like you are smoking crack.
Exactly.
You know,
what were you doing when you done this?
Yeah.
We came from doing an investigation at one house, and they had asked us back, and because stuff like a year or two later started ramping up some, and I don't know where it is at now because I, you know, told them we would be glad to come back, but we had some of the best EVPs there. We had, and sometimes it's when you're taking a break and just being a little silly. It's like they want to chime in. Something wants to chime in.
Yeah.
We had one guy. We were all there were six of us sitting in the living room in this small, you know, wood frame house, and we were taking a break. And one of the guys grabbed his camera and started flashing pictures without, you know, warning anybody, you know, blinding us kind of thing.
I killed that night.
And we had an EVP with some guy saying, stop taking the pictures or something along those lines, which mirrored almost what I said. I said something a little bit different than that. But, the guy we couldn't see or hear didn't like it either.
Nope.
and that one, you know, was pretty cool.
Got to do the call letters, y'all. We're live on WCJV Digital Broadcasting out of Youngstown, New York. You're listening to Half Past Dead Paranormal Radio with Roger Belt and Kat Hobson, and our special guest is Martha Hazzard Decker. We have just been having a great time, you guys. I love this. It's very interesting, and I can't say enough how much, even just looking in what I've looked at of this book here, that the information is just awesome. And she's right. you should never do interviews alone. That part kind of stuck in my head because that's usually the way I used to do it. But I don't think I want to do it that way anymore because I want to live to do the investigation, or another investigation.
True that.
Anyways, we'll get back to where we was, and here before long we're going to have are supposed to have a special caller, so we'll I didn't mean to interrupt. Just carry on where you were. We'd probably be having a call here for long.
I'm so old, I almost forgot where you were.
Well, I was wanting to go with what is a proxemic? Or
those all have to do with your body with watching. All that whole part of the book is about watching body language, watching demeanor, and how yours is as well. Not just theirs, and things that you should do, and
things like putting them at ease.
Yeah. There's some people who have phones that they take with them, and, the phone is, grown into their hand, and they can't go anywhere without it. And they're constantly looking at everything. And, that's all into the building your rapport, making the person feel important, because if you come in late and you, don't call them, and I mean, we're talking like really late, or if you're constantly, texting on your phone because somebody, sent you a text.
Oh, we had that happen too.
They feel like, I just bothered them for nothing. You get into your use of space with that as well. It's important to know maybe somebody's culture when you're dealing with them, and then the use of space. That's something that we use when we interview somebody, especially our interrogation. Not even an interrogation, but interview. Probably one of the best shows that you can watch to learn how that works is 48 Hours. Dallas PD. I know a couple of the detectives on there because I worked with them. As a special investigator, I didn't work with them, but they were doing the criminal investigations while I was assisting on the civil side. But you can see how they work in our investigation interview room. You have like a table and two chairs. And when you start out with somebody, there's a distance because it has to do with a distance, and getting in somebody's space. And as you're, trying to determine, and especially if you think that they're not being truthful, you can get closer and closer into their space. Like they used to say, I used to, break them down, especially when I knew they were guilty, but break them down and you just know when you're almost there, and they would almost get broken down and they're ready to confess, and then you start building them up in a way that they're allowed to tell you what they did while saving face. So they felt like, yeah, I did it. Yeah, I robbed the store or whatever it was. But you kind of give them an out so that they feel more comfortable doing that. But as you close into their space, that's when they start getting a little, more nervous. But if you're going to go interview somebody who's of a different culture than yours, like a lot of us, we look for that eye contact, say. Well, some cultures, that's rude. Mm-hmm. It may not just be, male-female eye contact. You just don't have eye contact, period.
Right.
And understanding some of the idiosyncrasies of some of the different cultures helps you when you're, interviewing somebody. But But 48 Hours is just a really good one to watch. You know, of course, it's reality TV, but it gives you an idea of how to do that. You know, there's one guy that used to come up to the police department to see me. I did wrong, and he'd tell me all this stuff, and people would hand him a Kleenex box as he would come into my office or something.
Oh my gosh. History there.
I wasn't going to be mean to him. He just always cried.
Now, did he do a psych evaluation?
Did he do what?
A psych evaluation.
Oh, well, no, actually he was somebody who had a serious motorcycle wreck and had a severe head trauma. But I just made him cry all the time.
There's some people that do that. You know?
Oh, well, that's what I've been told. That's when the mad dog comes out sometimes. But I didn't. All I had to do was just look at him, and he'd start crying. Yeah. I wouldn't. I didn't have to get mad. You learn how to be you learn how to be a good actor sometimes.
Yeah.
And hiding your tails when you're dealing with somebody. You know, there was somebody that I interviewed once, and a younger officer, fairly new officer, was in there with me, and he looks at me afterwards, and he goes with these big old eyes, "I never want to make you mad." And I just looked at him and started laughing, because it's like, you haven't seen nothing. You know, I'm not mad. You know, I just put my mad dog's face on. That's all I did.
Well, you've done this for over 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Investigations in one shape, form, or fashion.
20 plus, yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And you know, it actually started when I first started reserving in 84, I think it was, somewhere around 84. I came in, I was the only female officer in the county in East Texas. And I was working for a newspaper at the time as well. And then, of course, I started reserving, but that was very interesting. And I forgot that train left the station without me. I don't even remember what my point was.
Well, you were talking about, how long you had been in it. You came in as the only female. You've been doing the interrogate, because basically it is an interrogation before you get to the investigation.
It is.
Just
there was
a little softer than what you would use, in law enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah, but all the tools you can take an investigation or an interview. You can go take a class, read a book on how to do it in law enforcement, and you can go into a paranormal interview or investigation and pretty much do the same thing. You can, literally. Or the presentation I do when I speak at conferences, I didn't do it. There's paranormal information in there, but I did it in the same manner as if I had prepared a presentation for a group of law enforcement. Because I'm an instructor with that, and I just the same way. They just kind of go hand in hand.
Right. What is the most unusual or toughest interview that you have done? And that particular one, paranormal speaking, okay? Because some things in the law enforcement, but did that interrogation the interview prior to your investigation of your strangest one make you go into the investigation, or did it make you realize that there was no cause?
Probably one of the most interesting was a case where they actually had 7 children in the house, and all kinds of things were supposed to have been going on. And because I'd had over 20 years of working crimes against children, both ends, mostly it was criminal at that time, but the criminal and civil, I had watched, I don't know how many, interviews, the forensic interviews of children. And I can't tell you how many of those that I did myself. So and it applies to this too. You can, and so I did the interviews of the children, and somebody else interviewed the parents while I was doing the children, and I had somebody else who had been in law enforcement with me while we interviewed the children. And if they can pick, somebody can, go to YouTube, get a book, watch how to do forensic interviews of children. It's fascinating. You need to, depending on the age, you need to establish if they even know the difference between truth and lie. Uh-huh. And that's fairly easy to do. It's important to ask non-leading questions, open-ended questions, because children want to please you. It's important to make them know that it's okay to say, I don't know, on something, and that they're not in trouble. When you ask, and what happened with these children, they range from maybe a couple years, from about 2 years old to about maybe 10. And they all slept upstairs in this one huge open area that had like 2 bedrooms or so, and there had been an attic, I think, and it was all open. And you had these children telling me stories about, something pulling them off their bed at night. And I mean, they were just crazy stories. And so something that I asked them too is, what kind of TV do you watch? Do you watch scary movies? Those kids, even the youngest one, they had seen everything. Paranormal Activity 1, 2, you name it. But, movies like that, they just had a steady diet of all that. So they were feeding off of all of that. There wasn't really anything paranormal there that we were able to determine. Now, I think Dad had, there might have been something that had gone around with Dad through his life, but could have been a family member or something that was not even annoying, that they would hear, somebody walk on the stairs. It wasn't scary. He had that, and his children, this was a blended family. They hadn't been married that long, and when she moved in with her kids, all this crazy stuff supposedly started happening. And Dad was also saying, he had a name, I don't know what, he had a name for this person. He'd say, like, Joe, you can come with us over to this house. But it was something they were all used to. A door might move a little bit. Like I said, or footsteps, nothing major. And this was an old farmhouse, too, so I don't know how much of that was just imagination. But the other interesting part with it was there was a huge area over the carport that was sealed off. There was a piece of wood screwed to the wall, so nobody could. There might have been a door opening or something at one time, so that nobody could go in there. So while we were there, they took that off the wall, not us. Let them do it, so that if there was anything that messed up the wall, they did it.
Right.
So we could, see what was in there, so we could get some readings in there, take a few pictures. By this point, we didn't really think there was anything there but a bunch of kids that were feeding off of each other, and we discussed, parental responsibility and things that might be good or not good for children to see, watch at certain ages. So it was more like a parent education type class, but when they opened that up, there was this long, narrow, handmade box that was secured to the floor that was probably about the width of, like, I don't know, maybe 8 feet long and 3 or 4 feet wide and about 4 feet tall. And the top just would lift up. It was like a storage box, but you couldn't move it. It was put in there and built, they may have built it in there. Get out of town. I'm serious. So we're like, we're thinking, oh, cool. What's in the box? What's in the box?
Is it a coffin?
And that whole, no, it was a lot bigger than a coffin. I don't know what, this house was built maybe in the early 1900s. I don't know who lived there before they lived there, and I don't know how long, that had been sealed. I don't know why it was sealed up, because it was a good room that could be used for a lot of storage and different things. But it was sealed. The stuff was screwed in. You couldn't just pop it off.
What was in the box?
Nothing. It was empty.
No.
It was clean, and it was clean. There were no cobwebs, no bugs, nothing. So, that was
weird.
It made me think of Geraldo and the safe.
Yeah, and the
when we did that. But that was probably one of the strangest cases that really, wasn't a case.
Now, I got to ask, what was the most scary, real active place that you ever went to?
I haven't found it yet. I really, nothing has really scared me. Now, there's been some places that I've been that had some areas that just felt kind of heavy and dark, that I might just not blunder in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hospital up in far northeast Texas that we've been to. I've been there 4 times, and there's some activity upstairs. We always have personal experiences. We got some pretty good EVPs the last time we were there. But there's one area by this cryogenic sterilization machine or something. Wow. And I think that just happens to be there, but in the little hall, it's the darkest area. It's always just super dark in that one area. And the first time I went in, you have this wall, that's, you can feel it. You can just feel the energy. Then it's not particularly good energy, but you feel it, and it was very strong. But also in there was a closet. You went to the end, there's a little closet, and it goes into an operating room, that's on the other side of the wall. And I could hear a little girl in there. You heard this voice of what sounded like a little girl up there. And there's a couple of guys maybe that are up there that don't really like being disturbed. But we, fought through, and we've had some interesting times in that hospital. And, would love to go back and do some more, but I don't think that's probably ever going to happen, because I don't know what the city's going to do with it. But, we had 3 years or so that we were going through there. I had a call from somebody who was involved in doing a haunted house. They would do a haunted house on the bottom floor every year, where the donations would go to the fire department. And I was, it's been about a year since I've been to the hospital. I wonder, what they're doing, if everybody's in there and so on. I get a call from this guy in his 20s who's hysterical, saying that they were in there, and his girlfriend took a cross that was hanging on a baby's crib, and now she was possessed. And he was just going on and on. So they went to the priest, in town, and they were blessed, and I told them she needed to take that cross back. He needed to put that cross back where she found it. He needed to apologize, do an offering of tobacco, and then I told him, tell her to walk backwards out the door. Don't turn your back. Well, I kind of added a little bit to that. I have no idea where that was, other than it's deep, like in the middle of the hospital somewhere. And I told him that she had to walk backwards all the way out of the hospital.
Oh, my.
And she did. And she never, ever, ever, ever steal anything like that.
Well, you can't. I mean, I've had people from homes that we investigate that try to give me things to take home with me. And
that's
it's
where
just
I'm
no, thank you.
Right.
Well, I do have one thing that came from a home that we investigated, but it lives outside. It is not in my house. because they were just adamant. And I was very nervous about transporting it home. I got to the end of the driveway and I did a binding ceremony. So then I brought it home. But, but like I said, it lives outside and it's happy and content and I'm happy and content. So it's all good. But yeah, you never do that. People are so crazy to do that. It's so dangerous.
I won't take stuff with me. Especially if we get, real activity going on and they're saying, well, we brought this in here and it all started, take it home. No.
No. That would be a definite no. If this is because I do believe items are haunted.
Yes.
I do believe items have spirits. Or can have, not all.
Right. And, sometimes we have antiques in here. We have some interesting objects here. My husband, we're both scuba divers. And, back when in his college days, he spent one summer with a, commercial salvage operation off the Gulf Coast. And it was the year that the VA Frog sank. Well, they had the explosion. I think there were 65 men on that ship.
Yeah.
And they all died. Well, they were trying to salvage the ship. So we have like some, like a wheel off of one of the, a couple of bigger items off of the ship. And they were having trouble salvaging it and bringing it in, and it ended up in the ship channel. And, now it's a reef.
Right.
And I think it might be like a state park or something now. It wasn't at the time. And, so he was in there diving when there were still people in there.
Oh, that's just
at the time. But he also got to dive. He went to college at West Point. He also got to do some archaeology, diving in the Hudson River for artifacts.
That's awesome. That's not shabby at all.
Yeah, so they were bringing up all kinds of, historical artifacts for the archaeologists.
See, I think that would be fun. My husband and I both have a.
But you just kind of sometimes wonder about, especially if it's an item that was associated with tragedy. We haven't had anything. We haven't had anything here that we're worried about or anything, of course.
Well, I just know that the same house that the guy sent me something home with, we had to go back because it had picked up different activity. And the first time we were there, we went through the house and, smudged and spoke and the whole experience that everyone knows you go through as you're doing this. And it was my first time to investigate with this particular team. And everybody pulled out, and I was the last man standing, waiting to back out. And the homeowner came running out of his house, and I thought that he was bringing what ultimately wound up at my house out the door, and I'd already been like, no, I can't do that. And he was not bringing that out. He was bringing an item that he had put in a box, salted, sealed, put in a dumpster or in a trash bin, watched the garbage man empty, watched it drive off down the road, and it was in his son's room when we did the investigation because I remember seeing it. And he saw it as we were leaving and came running out the door with it and said, "Did you bring this here?" And I said, "No, we didn't, but, Kim had been pretty sure that she saw a football, but we wound up having to use an Easter egg to do what we were trying to do because it was shaped the same." And he was like, "Well, you have to take this with you. This can't be in my home." I'm like, "Well, it can't be in my car." I mean, I did not have any experience with that. So I ultimately found it and disposed of it, and it was a whole new experience. And I personally think that because of how I was told to dispose of it, that's why they picked activity up again and we had to go back, because I don't think it was the correct methodology for that situation after I researched it further. And
and sometimes, go ahead.
That's just the way that rolls sometimes.
Yeah, I think sometimes they, reinvite things back in. I know of somebody, or I know of someone who has said things like, as things quieted down, they're bored, and it's like, come back.
I know. What is up with that?
I don't know. I went to an investigation to assist somebody over in southeast Texas. And there was another family. There were a bunch of kids there, and they're talking about all these things going on in the house. And so I'm interviewing the kids again. I do a lot of the kid interviews because of my past. And these kids were so hyped up. Then the boys are telling me about this house around the corner, and they're describing the house and where it is. And then the teenage, sisters, the same thing. We go over there, and we feel like it's evil when we go over there, and lights are on, and nobody lives there, and just all, talking about all this activity over there. And what was at their house was really nothing, if there was activity. So I look at them, I go, well, if you're so afraid, why are we here at your house? Because that was worse, and if that is, why are you going over there if you're so afraid of what's here in your house? Stop going over there. Stop inviting, something to, maybe end up at your house.
Exactly.
Stay away from it.
Well,
you don't know what you're doing.
We got a couple of minutes left, you guys, so, are you ladies? I'm sorry. Martha, if you'd like to give out some links where people can find your book, where they can reach you if they need to.
Okay, they can find me. Just go, look on Facebook. Our paranormal team webpage is etxhaunted.com. ETX is in East Texas, haunted.com. The book you can find on Amazon. You can find it in Barnes & Noble. It's the kind of the hard soft cover right now, and then there's the ebook. If you go to America Star Books, if you look them up and go to their website, you can get the ebook for $3.99. I'm going to try to get that reduced down to $1.99, and in the next 2 or 3 weeks, you can get my book the same as it is now, but it's going to be classified paperback for $9.99. So that's going to be a reduction.
Awesome. I want to thank everybody.
It's good too.
I want to thank you, Martha, for coming on with us. I want to thank everybody in the chat room that came in, and everybody listening by phone or tablet or what have you. Can't have a show without you guys, so thanks so much for coming, everybody. Thanks, Martha, for being our guest tonight. Thanks, Kat, for doing such an awesome job.
Well, thanks for having such an awesome guest book. This has been wonderful.
It has. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to say good night, everybody, and next week, same bat channel. And I'm not exactly positive on, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce her name right. I know it's Macaulay. I'll explain a little bit more about it later. The event will be up. Deidre Macaulay, she's from Australia, I believe. Not Australia.
New Zealand?
I want to say Ireland, somewhere over there. Scotland, Ireland. One of them places, we'll get it all.
One of those places.
We'll get it sorted out before now and then, but,
Well, Roger, can I invite people to Wednesday?
Well, yes, you can.
Well, as you all know, this is the place to hang out with Roger Belt, and Half Past Dead Paranormal is way too cool. I have a show on Wednesdays which is Paranormal Experienced, and this week's guest is Krista Cesare, who is fresh off Phenomenology 107, fresh off Coast to Coast Radio, and fresh off of a fabulous Father's Day, too.
Awesome.
So, I hope all the dads had a great day.
We also have Frank Lee, who does Paranormalities and Ponderings on Tuesday night, so everybody chip in for that one.
And Michael.
And Michael Gray on Thursday night. And Blackthorn Path on Sunday night. So This is a place to hang out. Everybody come and join us. We always have a good time. And always interesting people. So check us out all next week. And with that, I shall say adieu and good night, everybody.
Good night.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.